does not remember men who choose to sit idly by. It remembers those who stand up and make a doggone difference. That's what the world remembers. Somebody once told me, and I think this is great wisdom, they said, Bill, comfort is a slow death. I love that. Comfort is a slow death.
Welcome to the Third Degree Masonic Podcast, where we are always on the level. We're your hosts. I'm Brother Samuel.
I'm Brother Gabriel.
I'm Brother Ryan.
And we're just a bunch of Masons trying to figure out our place in this fraternity. Craftsman, every once in a while, you get an opportunity to meet a true rock star in our fraternity. A legend, if you would. And today, we had the opportunity to meet that legend. A man who genuinely makes you feel for this craft, that makes you want to go that extra mile to be that cheerleader for Freemasonry. And I'm just so proud to say that we had the opportunity to have him on our show. And I think it's going to be an awesome interview for all of you. For those of you that aren't from our jurisdiction, this man truly is an inspiration for any Mason, and I say that from the bottom of my heart. And I really look forward to sharing his wise words of wisdom with you.
And Craftsman, we really enjoyed recording this episode. It was phenomenal, and it was an amazing time working with the Grand Master. However, we want to deliver this content to you in the best way possible. So we're going to package it in 2 episodes. So it'll be easier to digest, easier to listen to, and easier to absorb all of the information that we're talking about instead of being bombarded by a nearly 2-hour-long interview, but every minute of that interview is just as good as the last minute before. So, Craftsman, if you'll stick with us on this journey that we're going to do, you'll hear the first episode, and then the following week, the next episode will be delivered as a special treat of not having to wait 2 weeks for it.
And on a better, or I shouldn't say better, but another topic is we have a little bit of surprise. At the end of each episode, we'll be announcing the winners of our survey raffles. Again, that's at the end of the episode, so you'll have to listen to the entirety amazing episode that we had recording with our brother. And then hopefully you're a winner and you'll receive a nice prize. Again, that's at the end of each episode.
So, Craftsman, I think you know by now from listening, if you've listened to the show a little bit, that I'm not a big fan of the politics in Masonry. I'm not a big fan of the hierarchy, and I am sometimes the black sheep or the rebel. But I would like to genuinely say from the bottom of my heart that you'll know when I say this, it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Most Worshipful Brother William Carter, Grand Master of Masons for the Grand Lodge of Ohio. And let's get on to this amazing interview. And for today's episode, we welcome Brother Carter. Welcome to the show, brother.
Fantastic to be here. Thanks for having me today.
Of course. How are things going for you?
You know, I think I'm meeting myself coming and going right now. It's nice and busy, which is good, not only within the Masonic fraternity, but within my professional life as well. So a lot of airplanes happening right now, a lot of things going on geopolitically, a lot of advances taking place within the field. So, you know, no concern about idle hands here. We're keeping plenty busy.
Well, I think I'm going to start off with the most important question that I'm sure everybody's got to know, why Waffle House and what do you order there?
So I'm going to answer the first question fully, and the second question I'm going to answer partially, and I'll tell you why. So why Waffle House? I tell you, that actually goes back to when I was attending school at the Ohio State University, where I resided. There was a Waffle House right outside of the neighborhood, and I'll tell you, it was inexpensive. The food was good. It was consistent. And I think that's how I got hooked on the drug, quite honestly. Yeah, it was great. And what's awesome about it is it doesn't matter where I am, whether it's throughout the state of Ohio or, most of the country, certainly not all of it. There's always a Waffle House, so I always know what I'm going to get. So that's why Waffle House. Now, what do I order? Again, I'm going to answer that partially. I typically order a cheese omelet. I love raisin toast with apple butter. And I have to have my famous Waffle House hash browns. But I'm not going to tell you how I have my hash browns because this is about to be a trivia question at an inspection in the First Masonic District. They're going to ask if the brethren know how the Grand Master has his hash browns at the Waffle House. So I can't tell you that part, but that part always stays the same too, right? So I'm not a creature of habit. I love to consider myself a culinary adventurer, but yes, when it comes to my Waffle House, same thing, right down the lane.
That's perfect. Well, now that we got the icebreaker out of the way.
Sure.
How long have you been a Mason, brother?
Oh my goodness. I think we are, I'm going to hit my 20th year as Master Mason, but I kind of started this journey in 2004. That's when I first reached out to investigate the fraternity. An interesting story on that, if I can. When I first reached out to the fraternity, I happened to reside in pretty close proximity to two lodges. And again, I'm new at this, so I figure you see one lodge, you've seen them all. So I reached out to both lodges, and I will tell you that the lodge that's my mother lodge, where I was raised in June of 2005, just happened to be the one that reached out to me first. So it was just pure happenstance. They're the ones that reached out to me. But yeah, we're going on 2 decades here. And I will tell you, of that 2 decades, I was thinking about this not too long ago. In that 2 decades, those 20 years, I have been an officer or in a leadership role for probably 19 and a half of those years. So, whether it was starting through the officers in the lodge, moving on to, the District Blue Lodge Association, DEO, District Deputy, Grand Lodge line. Yeah, literally been in a position like that for 19 and a half of the 20 years. But wow, what a journey.
You jumped right in, feet first, like no hesitation.
Well, a funny story, and I've mentioned this before. It wasn't just jumping into a steward's role, which is, for those who aren't familiar, it's very service oriented, right? You're really a servant of your brothers, whether it's preparing food or, helping other officers in the line of their duty. Not only did I jump into that, but right away the lodge said, congratulations, you're a Master Mason. Why don't you be our lodge education officer? Which, you want to talk about baptism by fire. It was right away, get good at this. And to literally look around the room and see this gathering of all these seasoned Masons, and I'm going to teach you something. So probably one of the greatest things that could have happened, right? Jumping right in, made me realize that, look, this is not a fraternity for somebody that wants to be an audience member. This is a fraternity that expects you to make something, build something. And so good introduction into the fraternity. So I've been kind of swinging the proverbial Masonic chisel for 20 years now, and I've still got plenty to learn. It's been great. So wonderful couple decades.
I absolutely love the fact that your first officer was education officer. So my D. Malay mentor, Chris, he became worshipful master of the lodge about 6 months or so after I was raised. And he made me his education officer as well. And he got a lot of flack for it from the guys at Northern Light. because, oh, you're putting this young kid as your education officer. And he said, well, what better position for a new Mason to learn about the fraternity and grab it by the reins than this, than to do that. And it was hard. It was really hard. But at the end of the day, I feel like I got done. I feel like I really learned something from it. I feel like it was a really good start. So I find it really cool that you did the same thing I did.
Yeah, I love that. And, you're very fortunate that you had the opportunity to do that in DMLA. I think DMLA, we undersell that. It's been my experience, and I won't dig too much into this, but throughout my Masonic travels, I look at those young men that are in DMLA, and the program in DMLA really transforms young men. It is remarkable. So yes, very much the same thing as you're saying. They're going to expect you to get to work, but boy, do they equip you with some amazing tools. So love to hear that. You obviously got a good start. I regret that I didn't get that opportunity, but boy, I would recommend that to anybody. Absolutely phenomenal program.
Absolutely. We, both me and Gabe and Ryan are all big, strong, cheerleaders for DMLA. Gabe and I were both members, but Ryan was not, and he always talks about how he wishes he was. So
yes.
So where did you first learn about Masonry, and what about it? What made you decide to join?
That's a great question. So I actually learned about it from my mother and my grandfather. So my maternal grandfather was a Mason in Michigan, and it's not that I'd really ever observed him doing Masonry. He had kind of taken a step back in the fraternity for his professional life and so forth, but was very proud of it. My mother was part of Job's Daughters. I can remember and I don't know if they even do this still today, she had a Job's Daughters ring. And I remember seeing it in her jewelry box. And so I was curious, and I heard a couple things. But where I really started getting a sense for it is my great-grandfather, when he passed away when I was very young. And he'd been very deep in the fraternity. He was in the Shriners, Eastern Star. And I remember one time I had opportunity to stay with my great-grandmother for an extended period of time, just kind of a vacation thing. And she had a room in her home that had a box of all his pins and rings. And I know that sounds totally foreign to us today, pins and rings, right? But I was fascinated. As a kid, I was completely fascinated by that, right? All these jewels and these blingy things. So it had kind of been baking in my mind for a long time. Where the rubber meets the road, though, is I was taking opportunity to interview my grandparents. My wife was pregnant with our daughter, and I thought, I want to record the voices of my grandparents so that my daughter has that opportunity to hear from her great-grandparents. And during the interview with my maternal grandfather, I did bring up Freemasonry. And I have to tell you the change that came over his face when he started talking about the fraternity, the pride that he had, that he was a life member, but the pure emotion that came from him when he was talking about his Masonic experience, that's what really made me sit up and take notice. Now, interestingly, after that interview, I decided that I would reapproach the fraternity. I thought about it about 10 years prior, and I'm going to date myself here, right? So I was on the internet before everybody knew about the internet, right? I'm old enough.
Thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So as a student at Ohio State, I got on and had done a search about Freemasonry on my Alta Vista search engine. If anybody remembers that. I warned you I was going to date myself. And the first thing that came up was an anti-Masonic website.
Of course.
And of course, that literally knocked me off the rails for a decade that I didn't approach. But it really was, it wasn't so much that he talked about it, because he didn't. It wasn't that I was convinced. It was the change that I saw come over him. That told me that there was something deep in this fraternity that would be worth my time to investigate. So that's why I had literally reached out. Again, it was being knocked off track for 10 years, but seeing that transformation that came over his face that made me say, you know what, I got to be there. And as I've shared with some of my brother Masons, I was so fortunate that that same grandfather of mine was there when I was raised as a Master Mason. He came down from Michigan, even though he wasn't terribly able. He came down and he presented me with my Master Mason's ring when I was raised. And he's long since passed away. But I got to tell you, I can be in my lodge and I can look over and I can see that chair where my grandfather was. So I all these different things that remind me that I made the right choice. That's one that hits me in the heart is remembering the transformation in him and wanting to live up to that.
That's amazing. I think that, I mean, we, maybe to get a little bit off topic here, but we talk about these moments in life, these things that are supposed to be kind of achievements. Okay, the day I got my Master Mason is obviously a very big achievement for me.
Right.
Maybe the day somebody becomes a district deputy or becomes the master of their life. I think that the moment you're speaking of, I think those are the moments that we'll remember for forever. It's not when I got a title or when I got a jewel or when I did this or that. It's moments like that that you can never take away from somebody that mean inherently more.
That's you say that so well. It's very interesting, and I'm sure we can talk about it if needed. But there have been opportunities during my Masonic pathway where, quite frankly, if somebody were to say, "What has Masonry done for you?" one of the things I'd say is it's cost me a lot of sleep, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in a way that there are such exciting things. And you mentioned when you were raised a Master Mason. I got to tell you, when I went home that night after being raised, I could not sleep. My mind was just buzzing with what I had experienced. That example that I give you of seeing my grandfather's chair, and he's still in our sign-in book as well, right? That's in our Tyler's room. I still see his signature there. That's not one that costs me sleep, but that's one that I still reflect on to this day. I've always seen Masons show up for each other. I had never felt something that powerful than when it came from my grandfather. He had come down earlier in the day, and he and I have a deck in the back of my house, and he and I ended up sitting on the deck and just talking all day before that raising. So, yeah, you're right. It's such a memorable thing that really defines the experience, the emotional experience of what it means to be a Mason. Here's a man who's my grandfather. He's family. He's blood. But all of a sudden, we share something way, way deeper than that.
More.
So, yeah, pretty amazing.
It's I'm sure you and Gabe can talk about it a little bit later, but he actually raised his father into the fraternity, and they talk about it. They call each other brother father and brother son, and they see it's funny.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely have to talk about that. I had the similar opportunity, although under more what I would say unusual circumstances. But yeah, I've talked about that.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So we've talked about your service to the fraternity. You've been master of your lodge, I'm assuming, a couple of times.
3 times. 3 times.
Yep. And based on your current position, you've served in your district, and on a Grand Lodge capacity. How does it feel to be the Grand Master of Masons in Ohio? And what would you say to someone in our fraternity that wanted to follow in your footsteps?
Oh boy. How does it feel? I will tell you that there is a surreal aspect that never really goes away. This office is so much bigger than I am. The weight of this history of the office of a Grand Master is truly massive. And you know that you are truly standing on the shoulders of giants. You really are. It's, of course, as you would imagine, a lot of responsibility. It's really a balance between your heart and your head in terms of serving in this office. So you do spend a lot of time questioning yourself, making sure that you are doing the right thing for the craft. You constantly wrestle with that weight of history that says there's a reason for this office. You have a job to do, and yet there's also, so you may be tempted to try to do something new. It flies by so fast. I'm literally a third of the way through my term as Grand Master. It struck me today. I'm more than a third of the way through.
Yeah.
And so you have this sense of urgency, right? Because you love the craft and you want to do the best for the craft. You have an opportunity to sort of bump steer, right? You're not going to change the craft, right? But sort of bump steer the craft. Yet you also want to be there. And that's something that I've tried very hard to do, is to be very available to the brethren. I'm so fortunate. I get text messages, I get signal messages. Even though I said, don't reach me through Facebook, I hear people through Facebook all the time. Tried really hard to do that. And that's a wonderful, wonderful feeling to get to connect with brothers and to really feel their gratitude that, oh my gosh, I can talk to the Grand Master. Well, of course you can, right? I carry the same nomenclature as you. I'm your brother. That's my job. So I would say it's truly awesome in the real sense of the word, not the casual sense that we tend to use it. It fills me daily with awe that my brothers would trust me enough to allow me to serve in that role. Now, in terms of the other part where you said, what would I say to somebody in the fraternity that would want to follow in those footsteps? First of all, it's not really something that you can sort of build a resume for, right? What essentially had to happen is a man who would be Grand Master had to say, this guy could be the one. Let's give him a shot. Let's appoint him to an appointed office. And that office is all about serving. It really is. It's all about serving and proving yourself. And then it doesn't end there, because you have to be appointed again by 3 other people in subsequent appointments in the Grand Lodge line. None of this is assumed.
Right.
So you could literally come in the first year, you could do your best, and those men with whom you're serving may examine you, and they do. They examine you very closely, may say, you know what, he's just not a fit. And that's it. So it really is a path that is very much under scrutiny. And then, of course, you move to the next stage, the latter half, which is to be elected by your brothers. So kind of 2 stages, 4 years of, service and learning and kind of getting the instructions under you on how all of this works. And then the next 4 years are really sort of that executive role. Kind of think of it as like a CEO and, a president and a vice president and all these different things, really learning how to direct the affairs of the Grand Lodge. So how would I answer, how would somebody work in order to follow in those footsteps? I say, first and foremost, be ready to serve and be ready to build something. You have to build something. You cannot come in and be popular or be a spectator or cheer loudly from the sidelines. That's really not enough. You've got hurdles that you're going to have to overcome. And it's really stretched me. So yeah, come in ready to serve, ready to build something. That's what I would say. If you want to follow in those footsteps, do that, because it really is such a fortunate opportunity.
So it sounds like a lot of your time is dedicated to that work. In your free time, what do you like to do for fun? What do you do to relax, kind of take the edge off?
Well, that's a great question. So I'm an outdoors guy, right? Love to be outside. So I may be riding a motorcycle just to get a little breeze across the body, or I love hiking, love just spending time in the yard. I love yard work. I know I'm kind of a sicko, but that lawnmower is therapy for me. Um, but
Dave's happy.
yeah. But really anything outdoor, even doing things like going to festivals, right? So I like to go, whether it's just like an apple butter festival or I'm watching guys on horseback jousting each other at the medieval fair. I love that kind of stuff too. It really tends to revolve around doing things outside. I also, as a part of my career, I'm really, really fortunate that I work in a career that is also what I love. So I will spend time learning programming languages or, building a computer. That used to be more of a thing a long time ago, but I enjoy getting to do those things. So that's the in the house stuff, right? When I don't get to be outside or it's the dead of winter, love to do things. I like to build things. I just do. I was one of those Lego kids whose father would curse him because I'd leave Legos on the rug and he'd step on them and all that. But yeah, that's I do have a very active pursuit of many different hobbies. I do ham radio. I love the shooting sports. So love shooting pistol. I just recently started taking up sporting clays. And
Nice.
absolutely love sporting clays. Really, really fun. Something about a shotgun thundering next to your head. I don't know why. I really enjoy that. So you got a lot of hobbies. I wish I could say, I'm this guy. I'm a wood burning guy. I'm a gardening. I love to do it all. Get me outside and I'm happy.
So I do have to ask, what kind of motorcycle does the Grandmaster ride?
The Grandmaster, see, I'm going to upset a lot of people when I say this because the Grandmaster rides the motorcycle manufacturer that has the most made in America parts of all of them.
Would that be a Honda?
It's not a Honda. No, I ride a Victory Vegas. Now, unfortunately for Victory, they're not in business anymore, right? They're Indian now. But I love my Victories. I've owned 3 of them. Absolutely love them. Unfortunately, I can't buy them anymore. So hopefully the Indians are just as good.
Pretty close. So my first bike was a Honda Shadow.
That's a great start.
I learned how to ride on my buddy's Victory. I don't know why he let me do it.
That's a lot of engine for a learning bike. Wow.
He was like, here you go. Like, go ahead, jump on mine. It's insured. Worst thing you can do is wreck it, and I buy a new one. But now I have an 08 Harley Street Glide.
Nice.
So it's not a black Me Too bike, but it's a Me Too bike.
No, I love Harleys. Listen, there's nothing like the sounds of a Harley. In fact, funny story. I was with the widow sons. I am a widow son, and we all got on our bikes and we started them up. I started up my Victory, and my Harley brothers turned to me and they said, "Did you start it yet?"
Is the refrigerator door open?
Okay, I get it.
Yeah, I know the feeling. My the club that I'm in, I do not have the most extreme of all of the Harleys that everybody starts theirs up and they're revving it, and I turn mine on. I've got a pair of like slip-on, Vans.
Right.
They're like, "Aw, your bike off. It's cute."
I love it. Boys and their toys.
Yeah, amen to that. So you had spoken earlier that your profession is in technology, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, I'm actually in cybersecurity.
Oh, perfect. So with that background in technology and cybersecurity, what do you think the role of technology will play in our fraternity's future?
Well, so there's actually 2 questions buried in there, and I'll take the former question later. Sure. What's the role of technology in our fraternity? Listen, we got to lean into it. We really do. The bottom line is we live in a time where people are growing up and the digital accessibility is part and parcel of their upbringing. It just is what it is. So I think technology very much needs to be a part of our fraternity. And see, that's what's amazing about our fraternity, why it's so timeless, right? Because it's built on certain mysteries, on certain principles, on a history that actually lends itself well to modern technology, I really think we have to lean into it. So what do I mean specifically by that? Number one, COVID-19 taught us that technology can serve our fraternity in a way that is very, very effective. Excuse me for 1 second.
You're good.
So it as I say, serves us very well, and we saw that in COVID. The other aspect of it is that if we are a fraternity that states that we value the pursuit of knowledge and enlightenment, I can't think of a better use of technology than to facilitate that. We need to lean into that. Gone, I think, are the days where you have to travel to Washington, D.C. to go to the big library at the House of the Temple, or hope that you've got something local that has a library, and hope that you can find the musty, dusty book of our wisdom, and hope that everything's intact, right? Gone are those days. We have the opportunity to use technology to really increase the depth of wisdom and understanding with our brothers. So that's one specific way. The other way that I find very interesting right now, and of course I have to say this, because if you say technology, if I don't say AI, then I fail voted, right? So artificial intelligence, very, very interesting. I think it's a tool. No, I'm not a Skynet guy that thinks that it's gonna take things over. And there's actual reasons behind that, right? If you understand things like large language models and you understand how we train artificial intelligence, you'll understand that although it seems like magic to us, it seems like intelligence, it's all mathematics. It's mathematics and the availability of information. The bottom line is artificial intelligence hallucinates something fierce still, right? Yeah. We've got a lot of training that we need to do, but I think artificial intelligence can very much play into the fraternity in terms of helping with things like research, helping to generate content. The bottom line is you still have to have that human involvement in it. I think it also, the technology is giving us a lot of insights and breaking a lot of those assumptions that we've had. Things like, and people get very negative, and it's so wrong, but they'll throw their hands in the air and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, we have so many of us that are passing away, and what are we going to do about that?" Well, first newsflash, you're not going to change the hands of time, right? But when we actually utilize technology to examine what's going on in the fraternity, what we identify is a real thirst for programs that are engaging and interesting and those deep discussions. And all of a sudden we realize we're missing the boat by literally saying, well, this is what we've been told in the past, and this is what's going on, versus what technology tells us that's right in front of our face that says, man, the time is right now. You've got the opportunity right in front of you right now. That's what's absolutely key. So yeah, it's got to stay in the middle of it. Now, that's part one. Part two of it is the cybersecurity question. And, that's a big question, because the minute you say yes, technology in the fraternity, the natural question is, well, cool. So we should have internet lodges and we don't need to meet in buildings anymore. We're going to save all this money and all these different things. I think you need to be careful with that, because cybersecurity is the whole endeavor of cybersecurity is to protect our digital lifestyle. That's why it's here. Cybersecurity takes on nation state perspectives. It's big. A lot of times we know about wars before kinetic wars actually happen, right? Tanks and guns. Before that happens, it's happening way before in cybersecurity. So there's a lifestyle that we need to try to protect. And the reason for that is that there is a certain vulnerability that happens when you push everything into cyberspace, let alone the fact that cyberspace has still not found a way, even with artificial intelligence, to replicate that pure, beautiful, organic connection between men. It just hasn't gotten there yet. I don't know if you've been out on Facebook or Twitter. If you hadn't noticed, they're great platforms for nice, civil, political discourse, right? Everybody gets on there. They discuss their political opinions. Everybody's calm. Nobody gets upset, right? I mean, obviously, I'm being very facetious when I say that. And I think it's because it's missing something organic. You hide behind a keyboard and you can be any type of person that you want to be. You may feel like you're shouting from the veritable mountaintops, but you are missing something organic that gets accomplished when a bunch of guys, and you probably see this all the time, they'll go to lodge, right? And they'll spend their time together, and then they get done, and then they end up out in the parking lot. I like to call it parking lot lodge number 100, talking for twice as much time, because there's something about that organic connection that human beings, we have to have it. We have to have it. So it does play a role, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Understand that it has a role. It is not central to the fraternal experience, that very human, organic, analog, non-digital. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, that human experience.
So we need the technology. We should lean into the technology to improve the experience, not take the whole experience to the farthest end of the spectrum.
It's an enabler. It's a working tool. Yeah, maybe we can add that as another working tool in our lectures, right? The laptop is used by operative Masons.
Right. This is for the secretary.
Right. I don't know. I might raise some legislation for that. We'll see.
I love that, because I actually really like using AI. I think, so when we have a topic that we're going to do, so I guess I can talk about it now because it should be our next one after your episode. We're going to be investigating the Titanic and all of the Masons that were aboard, that passed, or that were there. Brother Gabriel's leading that up because he likes boats.
Nice.
But I used AI just to kind of give me an idea. Like, it's a good starting point, but it gave me a list of guys, and I'm like, wait a minute. And I looked them up, and it went, well, I assume that they were a Mason because they were an affluent member of society, which means they were probably Mason. Well, that's not good enough.
That's quite an assumption.
Not quite there. Great idea, conspiracy theories.
Yeah, here we are again, right? It's the model's only as well as it's been trained. But no, that sounds absolutely fascinating. And I got to tell you, just as an aside, in my professional career, cybersecurity is really struggling with artificial intelligence right now. We've been using artificial intelligence for probably 10 to 15 years. We just haven't told anybody about it. In order to do analysis and so forth. But what's different, what's new about AI is all of a sudden it's in the hands of the everyday consumer, right? And it looks like magic. It's not magic. We understand the flaws. I think what's been very interesting is the use of large language models and the fact that it now is almost becoming indistinguishable from a human being in terms of the way that it presents information. But there are still those assumptions on the back end that as a human being, we say, no, your logic is incorrect because you're dealing with a flat set of data. You are. The internet is a flat set of data. And the remarkable thing about the internet is I can make it say anything I want to, a la Wikipedia, right?
Right.
So there's no end to the foibles that can take place when you are training a generative adversarial network to create. And I know I'm getting into all the fancy terms on AI, but again, depending on what you're training and then how the adversarial portion of it comes back and argues, boy, you can end up with some absolutely crazy stuff. There was a neat, I'll finish on this. There was a neat opportunity at the test that somebody did with artificial intelligence where they presented a series of, I believe it was 16 or 25 photos and asked artificial intelligence, is this a chihuahua or a blueberry muffin? And trying to see artificial intelligence figure out which one was a chihuahua and which was a blueberry muffin was positively hilarious. So we've got a lot of work to do on that. Look, it's not magic, folks. Don't get excited, but it is neat in that it can really help with research, but it's still going to need that human eye because it is based on typically a set of data that is not necessarily vetted to the level that it needs to be.
I love that. I think it's amazing to hear some optimism when it comes from technology because I feel like a lot of the things that we do in the fraternity, and I'm not trying to speak ill, I feel like a lot of things are rooted in history and a lot of things are rooted in tradition, but I think some of those traditions need to be, personally, I think they should be altered a little bit to kind of fit in with the today and the now. And I think technology is a big one. that will allow us to kind of reach the next generation. I don't think you find the next generation of Masons at the library or at the bar or anything like that. I think we're going to find them out on the internet, and they're going to come find us.
Right. Well, so along those lines, and I think this bears being said, we tend to treat sometimes the fraternity and technology as diverging paths, right? We've got this fraternity, and it's very much about tradition and history and what's been passed down to us. And then we've got this technology path that seems to be going a different way. I think that we treat technology that way at our peril. We cannot do that. We have to allow those things to merge in whatever way is appropriate, because, and this is what I would argue, especially when we start talking about things like artificial intelligence, it is only through the benefit of that human wisdom that we have passed down in Freemasonry that we can learn to understand, to utilize, and to harness technology appropriately. You cannot let those worlds split. When you do, you now are experiencing those worlds in a vacuum from each other, and both of them are worse off for it. It's very, very important. Can you be a technologist and apply Masonic principles to it? Listen, I do that every day, right? Those things are not divergent. They do need to intertwine where appropriate. Also understanding, as I mentioned to you, that technology can never substitute for humanity, just like Masonry can never substitute for artificial intelligence, right? Both of them, right? We need to understand these are tools, as I said before, and we won't repeat the joke. But
I love it. This leads me perfect into my next question for you, talking about merging the two. Some would argue that Masonry has no place in today's modern society. What would you say to those people?
I would say if those people are arguing that from the outside looking in to Masonry, then we have done those people a disservice, because we have lost the ability, potentially, to articulate the beauty and the value of this fraternity. It's not their fault. The old bumper sticker days, to be one, ask one. Most people, if you told them that, they would say, well, I don't know any Masons. How can I ask one, right? How can I actually ask one? Even though we may be all around them. But listen, our discussion that we're having right now, we live in Ohio. Ohio is one of the largest Masonic jurisdictions in the world, period.
Yeah.
We have a lot of people, 60,000 people, plus the appendant bodies, in a population of 12 million. So, we have potentially let those people down by not being able to express to them what this sacred flame is that we carry inside, that we have carried through the many years of this fraternity. So that's from the outside. If, however, from the inside, you are looking at this and you are saying, well, we're peculiar, we're different, it doesn't really have a place in modern society, I just enjoy getting out of the house or whatnot, you've missed the boat. It's not too late, right? But you've missed the boat. Unfortunately, if we get into a place where we become procedural in our Masonry, you will develop that opinion from the inside. I promise you. If we're purely procedural, you're going to decide, yeah, this is just a series of steps. It's a good old boys club. It's a social network. It's a charity clearinghouse. Hey, cool. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's peculiar. We wear neat clothes, right? Okay, cool. But so what I would say, obviously, my argument is that it's needed in society, arguably now more than ever. We find ourselves in a society, particularly in this American experiment that we live in, where we are so severely polarized and living in an echo chamber through things like technology, through social media and the like, that I would say that the vast majority of those who wake up troubled like that, they have no idea how to get out. And in fact, what they end up doing is they end up eschewing technology. I'm dropping off a page. I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm done. I'm done. Freemasonry has an answer. Freemasonry has a methodology that says two individuals of completely divergent opinion can come together. They can discuss in a civil way, and they can actually synthesize. I know I'm starting to sound like a Hegelian, dialectics fanboy, right? But there is that capability to come together. I the laughter, I can hear it, right? But there is that capability to actually do that and to create something that really does have an answer for a society that is deeply hurting right now and is deeply polarized. There is benefit to coming together. It's not just a kumbaya moment for those that are older than me or my age. They know what kumbaya means. It's not just that come together around the campfire and strum the guitar moment that we're talking about here. This is very powerful. Imagine those sides being able to come together and synthesize for the better of humanity, for the better of this American experiment that we're in. We bring that possibility, but here's the part that concerns me. We forget that. We forget that we have that. We love to say things like, well, we never talk about politics or religion in the Masonic Lodge. And that's true, right? That's a principle. Why is that a principle? Well, we'll answer that very procedurally. Well, that's a principle because those are the things that tend to divide people. But then the next question is, why does it divide us? And nobody has an answer, right? Freemasonry has an answer. And if you are spending the time, this is why I love to have this discussion about the mysteries of Freemasonry. And everybody says, okay, you got all these mysteries, you go all the way back in time and all this wisdom. What's the point? The point of it is we can build something without killing each other. That's the point. We have the ability to come together and create something so incredibly powerful and world-changing. If you would explore those mysteries and understand why they're there and why understand why it changes people, then you would begin to build something amazing in this world. So does Freemasonry have a place in today's modern society? I said it once, I'll say it again. Modern society, I would argue, needs it now more than ever. The reason we don't talk about politics and religion in a lodge is because we have forgotten how to disagree in a civil way. But Freemasonry teaches you how to do that. And so what you end up with is with people that say, you know what? I'm done screaming at the top of my lungs on Facebook. It's not accomplishing anything. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to invite my Masonic brothers over for coffee. We're going to talk about politics. We're going to discuss religion. And we're going to do it in a way that is civil. We're going to do it in a way that is edifying. And we're going to do it in a way that could potentially change the world that we live in, because it's going to bring men powerfully together so that the whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. Yeah, we are definitely relevant to today's society.
That's amazing to hear. I 100% agree with you. The proof's in the pudding, like they say. I mean, even if you just look at my lodge, we have such a big background. I mean, we have, Brother Charlie Murphy, for one.
Yes.
And Mark Allred.
Yes, love him too.
A couple of professions. But then you've got, I work in the medical field, hands-on medical. And Gabe works for utilities. And I mean, there's such a wide range of just doing jobs. But with that comes different beliefs. We didn't all grow up the same. And I've talked about it on a couple of our previous episodes. My brothers are kind of the only people that when they tell me something, I mull it over in my brain a little bit longer. I let it stew. Most people tell me something and I go, whatever, you're crazy, or I don't agree with you. It's out, going. But when one of them says, maybe you should think about this a little bit harder, I go, okay, maybe I agree with you now, or at least I can see where you're coming from. Let's talk about it some more. And you know what? I'm wrong half the time. I'll admit it. I'm the first one to.
That's powerful too, to be able to admit that. And, I love that approach when somebody says, maybe you should think about that a little more. The appropriate Masonic attitude in that case is to say, tell me more. What am I missing? Tell me more.
Yeah.
Right. That's the appropriate thing. Something beautiful about this fraternity when you're really embracing those ancient mysteries and those wisdoms, is the ability to hold on to an idea and examine that idea without feeling like you have to then absorb and adopt that idea. You can hold that idea and you can evaluate that. And well, I tell you, one of the most beautiful things that I've seen is a brother who has one particular idea, another brother who has an opposing viewpoint, and they come together and they actually develop a new idea that they both embrace.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that is really, and then, you know, through, and we talked about DMLA and how it prepares brothers to speak. You know, we actually prepare brothers. We, you know, when we talk about we make good men better, and you ask a guy, well, what do you do to make good men better? Sadly, again, we do a disservice in not being able to answer that. We have a course of leadership training, if we're doing it right, that actually enables a man to be able to articulate something about rhetoric and grammar and something about that in our you know, our teachings, where when those new ideas are formed, they can now be released into the world and they can share those ideas. And suddenly polar opposites both begin to come together too. So again, I apologize for being so passionate about this, but this is at the very heart of what we are. This is not just a club. We have existed from time immemorial. Why? Why are we still here? And why do we continue to thrive the way we're thriving? And you know, we thrive in a way that maybe the world doesn't quite realize. Yeah, I love what you said. By the way, for our brother Gabe, he does not work in utilities. He works in critical infrastructure.
Thank you.
I got you, brother.
So much.
I got you.
Thank you.
I cannot tell you how many hours of my professional life I spend protecting that critical infrastructure that you make happen. Hey, shut the water off and see who wants to call it a utility.
You're right. Exactly. Exactly.
You're
I got you. I got you.
Thank you.
So, I have had one question since I watched you be installed this year. Well, last year technically, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do.
And I think it's been your running message ever since. And I think maybe some people have some differing opinions on what it means.
Okay.
But you have challenged us to be legendary. What does that mean exactly, and how can we meet your challenge?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So strap in.
Ready.
So listen, being legendary, a lot of times people, and let me roll the tape back before my brothers chose to elect me Grand Master. People used to ask me all the time, what's your theme going to be should you be elected Grand Master? And I always had trouble answering that question. In fact, I'd always give a joking reply, which I'll keep off the air here, so to speak. But being legendary is not a theme. Being legendary is the call. It's the call to action of Freemasonry. And in my Masonic experience, I've kind of distilled what that actually means. And so I do get asked this a lot, right? Well, be legendary sounds awesome, right? What does it actually mean? So I have 7 points behind this, believe it or not. And I have to, because it's such a huge question.
Right.
So what does it actually mean for a person to be legendary? I think the first thing is, it's right in the statement, be legendary. People are not born legends. They're not. Legends are made. That's why it's be legendary. It's not hope you were legendary, or congratulations, here's your legendary dues card, right? They're not born. They're actually made, right? It has nothing to do with your title. It has nothing to do with your rank. It's everything to do not only with your integrity, but with the impact that you have on other people. Nobody stumbles into this thing, right? You have to build it. You have to be legendary. So not born, they're made. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, it's not about memories, the memories that you leave. It's about a legacy. It's about doing something today that echoes beyond our time in our earthly lodges. Are we leaving things stronger? Are we leaving brothers wiser? And that does extend to the community. Do we as Masons impact the community in a lasting way? Interestingly, this thought kind of occurred to me as I was thinking about the operative aspects, right? Carving things in stone and so forth. And it just kind of dawned on me that those Masons that are legendary, their names are not actually written in stone. They're actually written in the hearts of every one of us. We know they're legendary because we say it together. So that's kind of number 2, right? Leave the legacy. Number 3, answer the doggone call, right? You can't just go around saying, be legendary, and look, it's on my pin, and then I got it on the back of my motorcycle vest. And it's the theme this year. The bottom line is you have to actually answer the call. You have to answer the challenge. You have to step forward. Here's the reality, and I'll shut this point down. The world does not remember men who choose to sit idly by. It remembers those who stand up and make a doggone difference. That's what the world remembers. Somebody once told me, and I think this is great wisdom, they said, Bill, comfort is a slow death. I love that. Comfort is a slow death. Come and answer, do something. Next one, the sacred flame. I talk about the sacred flame all the time, right? There's something that the legends carry inside of them. Listen, Freemasonry has always been a beacon. A Canadian brother of mine said that we're almost like a moral and spiritual fire axe, right? Break glass in case of emergency. We have always been that, and we have always passed that flame from one generation to the next. But here's the point. It takes vigilance. You cannot let that flame flicker or fade on your watch. You cannot. Your job is to help make it burn brighter. Your job is to illuminate the path. Your job is to pass that down. So that's, to me, that's an absolutely huge one. That's my number 4. My number 5 is you got to dare to be different. You just do. The world is full of men who are more than happy to be medium. Just be medium. Just be walking. Don't cause any trouble. Don't, right? We make a choice to actually go a higher path. We choose wisdom. We choose virtue. We choose brotherly love. Hey, I got to tell you, listen, I think we know this. In this fraternity, it is possible that a brother will hurt a brother. In fact, I can almost guarantee you're going to get hurt at some point. Why? Because we are imperfect men. But Masons come together and they say, I'm sorry. Or they come together and they say, you hurt me and we need to fix this. Right? We have to choose that higher path. We have to reject the ordinary. We have to question the profane things in this life. And we have to strive for light in every single thing that we do. Everything. And that kind of leads me to the next one, which is we don't chase recognition. Now, this is a pitfall in this fraternity. We have cool aprons and jewels and medals and ribbons. Listen, if you want to be legendary, don't do it for the applause. Do it for self-mastery. Do it for quiet fulfillment of doing the job well. Right? I really thoroughly believe that the honor that you would achieve in this fraternity doesn't come from your visibility. It comes from being worth remembering. That's truly what a legend is. And then last, and I've kind of alluded to it already, it's that the next generation of Masons is looking to the current generation to see what is legendary. Are we inspiring or are we complacent? What do they experience when they come into the lodge room? I've shared it during my rollouts. What I experienced when I first came in darn near chased me out of the fraternity. It did. It was close. It was just one guy. But he was a guy in a position, and he looked complacent. And when he looked complacent, when he said, I don't know why I'm doing this stuff anymore, what question do you think I asked myself as a young Mason? If you don't know why you're doing it, then I certainly don't know why I'm doing it. Legends build bridges for others to cross. That's what we do. We're the example for future Masons. We have to be the ones that they can call upon when they're looking for wisdom, when they're looking for strength, when they're trying to understand what is this Masonic light. We have to be the ones that they can call on. So that's a big mouthful, right? But those 7 points to me really begin to crystallize. What does it mean to be a legend in this fraternity? What does be legendary mean? That is the calling. Those 7 points, I think that's where it is.
Sorry, you're just gonna have to give me a second here because I love this fraternity so much. I've been around it since I was 12 years old, and when I joined at 19, I thought I was joining the DMLA for adults, and I was I don't want to say I was disappointed, but I kind of was, because it was like DMLA, but it's almost like what you were talking about. In a lot of ways, a lot of people had become complacent, and we were just jumping from inspection to inspection to inspection, and we were going through the motions, and there was very little fraternal brotherhood for a long time. Between 3 or 4 of us there was, but then the rest of the lodge there wouldn't be.
Yeah.
And and like you said, a couple of brothers, may have gotten some ideas and they hurt my feelings, and I left the fraternity for a little while. I never stopped paying dues. I was still a dues paying member. I changed lodges and came home to Genoa. But it wasn't until I came back and was doing things with my senior DMLA brothers that I think I found that sacred flame you were talking about. And we push each other and we razz each other, and I think Gabe pushing me to make this podcast because I have so many strong feelings about Masonry, and I wanted to share them with the world, and I wanted to put some good out there into the universe. And I don't think it was until I saw you speak at Grand Lodge that I finally had maybe a hope. It's something you said that day resonated inside of me, and it made me go, you got to work harder. You got to push stronger. This fraternity is more than just a bunch of guys getting together to do something. It's bigger than that, and it can be bigger than that. But it's only ever going to be bigger than that if we make it bigger than that.
100%. Oh my goodness, yes. 100%.
Sorry, you had me there because I'm sitting there and I'm going, it's like you're reaching into my brain and you're just saying all the things I keep in the back of my head, because sometimes you say this stuff and people fight you on it, and I'm like, I'm not that big of a rebel, guys. I just want us to be, be big. We're bigger than inspections, and we're bigger than, that's not what we exist for. We're not a charity, we are a charity, but that's not our only existence, but it's a big part. And I think it's a part that I genuinely love to do because it gets us out in the community. And it's the only way we find new people. But if we get complacent it will die. We have to do more. And it's just amazing. I'm sorry, I'm rambling here a little bit, but you hit me right in the heart, brother.
No, I appreciate you. And I love seeing that, right? Of course, I love seeing that. I like to think of it as resonance, right? One could say, and we talked about this earlier about the applicability of Masonry to modern society. The reason that Masonry is applicable to modern society is because Masonry does what it's always done. It appeals to that inmost heart in a man, right? That proverbial heart in a man that knows something's not right in the way that we're doing things. There's got to be something bigger. And what is that thing? What gives us the ability to learn from one another, to grow with one another, to have kind of that safe space where we can unravel all of those bonds that society has put on us, and then begin that rebuilding process of being somebody of consequence in this world, being that legend, right? In this world. It's truly a profound thing and very moving. It can be very difficult to articulate sometimes too, right? When you try to tell somebody about it, it can be tough to talk about that because it is so ethereal in nature. We know that it's there, but how do we actually define it? And the great thing about the fraternity, if you're doing it right, you're not just focusing on inspections, right? That's all procedural things. It's something I said during my rollouts. Business is necessary. Education inspires, right? We need that inspirational element, because once you tap into that, it's like an endless source of fuel. And what you end up with, hopefully, is at the end of your life, rather than laying on your deathbed, and nobody lays on their deathbed and says, gosh, I wish I could just have 40 more hours at work. Oh, I wish I had that, right? Nobody says that. But I can certainly see somebody saying, I wish I could just touch one more life. If I could just touch one more. Oh, how beautiful. How beautiful. And that's part and parcel of who we are.
Brother, this is just amazing stuff. And I hope our listeners are getting out of it as much as we're getting.
Well, thank you.
We're going to take a quick break and let them mull this stuff over their head for a moment. And when we come back, Brother Gabriel has some, let's say, more mind-blowing questions.
Very good.
We'll see you in a minute, Craftsman.
Sounds good.
Hey, Craftsman, it's Brother Gabriel. Thank you so much for listening and tuning in to our first part with the Grand Master of Masons in Ohio. We really appreciate it, and we hope you'll stick with us for the next part coming out next week. And on another note,
our first winner for taking our surveys. First off, we would like to say thank you to all of you that took the time out of your day to take our listener survey. We are taking everything that you guys wrote to heart, and we are going to do our best to implement everything that we can. And we'd just like to say thank you for sticking with us and helping us to improve. Our first winner is Brother Brian. Brother Brian, I will be reaching out to you after this episode to get an address so I can send you your Mason gear hat.
And on a final note, thank you again, brothers, fellows, craftsmen, for not just listening to this amazing first part, but sticking with us, listening to all of our episodes, and just helping us improve. Thank you guys again. Couldn't do this without you, and we look forward to hearing from you. If you could find it within the length of your cable tow, spread our name around, spread the episodes around in lodge meeting, talk about us, just kind of share us around. We'd love to spread our wisdom, our episodes even further, and we'd love to continue to hear from you.
I think some of the wisdom in our guests it needs to be shared, but the only way we're going to get any bigger is with your help, Craftsman. There's only so many Facebook ads I can put out there, so we'll see you very soon for the amazing conclusion of this interview. See you later.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast do not reflect those of the Grand Lodge of Ohio, its officers, or any of its jurisdictions. They only reflect those of the hosts or guests.